A supermarket aisle. Mid-1960s America. Fluorescent light. Metal shelving. A long wall built from cardboard boxes. Cereal. Not one brand. Not 5. 47. Different colors. Different mascots. Different claims. Extra vitamins. Family size. New taste. All competing for the same morning. A Soviet visitor stands still in front of the shelf. He does not reach for a box. He reads the front panels like instructions. Then the side panels. Then the backs. Around him, shoppers move without hesitation. A hand reaches in, pulls a box, drops it into a cart. No pause. No calculation. He stays in place. Because in his country, breakfast does not present a decision. It presents what exists. If there is cereal, there is one. If there is no cereal, there is something else. The question is not which one. The question is, did it arrive? Here, nothing needs to arrive. It is already there. In multiples. The aisle is quiet. The abundance is not loud. It is orderly. Permanent. Maintained. The visitor is not staring at food. He is staring at a system. And the system is asking him to perform a task his home system never required. Choose. The shelf looks like a personal freedom story. It isn't. It is an engineering story. A supermarket is a sorting machine. It compresses thousands of upstream decisions into one visible surface. On the American side, that surface is produced by competition and logistics. Producers fight for placement. Retail chains negotiate for margins. Distributors optimize routes. Advertising manufactures attention. Packaging competes at 3 feet of distance. None of that is decoration. It is a structure. Every extra cereal variant implies a separate supplier contract, a separate run on a factory line, a separate box design, a separate shipment, a separate slot on the shelf. 47 boxes are not 47 breakfasts. They are 47 attempts to capture preference. Preference is not a mood here. It is an input. The system listens for it indirectly. Through sales, returns, coupons, and inventory turnover. If a cereal fails, it disappears. The shelf forgets it. Failure is localized. A brand dies. A factory pivots. A marketing campaign is replaced. The system survives. It learns by discarding. Now put that next to the Soviet planned economy. In a planned economy, demand is not collected at the shelf. It is estimated above it. Targets are assigned. Outputs are counted. Inputs are rationed. Factories report up. Variation is costly because variation creates unpredictable inputs. Unpredictable inputs break plans. Plans exist to prevent surprises. So the system defends itself by simplifying. One type becomes the type. One package becomes the package. If there is a change, it is slow, because every change must travel upward first. In the West, the shelf is a feedback loop. In the East, the shelf is the end of a pipeline. That difference does not show up in speeches. It shows up in cardboard. The visitor keeps reading. He is not searching for best. He is searching for a rule. Which one is the standard? Which one is the safest? Which one is the one you are supposed to buy? Because in systems with limited variation, choices carry signals. If there are two nearly identical products in a Soviet store, they are not options. They are often a substitute, a shipment difference, a regional packaging, or a temporary exception. You do not build an identity from them. You do not compare them for pleasure. You do not optimize breakfast. You adapt. That adaptation becomes normal. And when adaptation is normal, the act of choosing does not develop as a daily habit. Choice is not only availability. It is training. Training happens when you repeatedly face alternatives. You repeatedly accept that your selection is not final. And you repeatedly learn from consequences. American retail assumes that cycle. It is built into the aisle. But the visitor is standing inside a cycle he has not practiced. So he does what trained people do when they lose the tool. He slows down. He tries to reconstruct the missing procedure. He reads more. This is the cognitive shock of abundance. Not the presence of goods, but the demand for evaluation. No one tells him what to pick. No clerk controls the purchase. No state committee authorized a correct cereal. The system outsourced this step to the individual, and then scaled itself around that outsourcing. The aisle is not generous. It is efficient. It moves decision-making downward to keep production moving upward. It is tempting to imagine that the Soviet system failed because it lacked money. That is a comfortable explanation. But the cereal shelf is not a money story. It is a coordination story. To generate 47 variants of a simple product, a society must tolerate redundant production, aggressive marketing, waste, and frequent failure. It must accept that some factories will run a line that disappears next year. It must accept that packaging will change before machines wear out. It must accept that mistakes are part of the method. The planned economy treated mistakes as a threat. Not because planners were irrational. Because planning is a promise. A plan says, if we allocate inputs correctly, outputs will match needs. If outputs do not match, the promise collapses. So the system protects the promise by reducing the space where mismatch can occur. Less variety means fewer mismatches. Fewer mismatches means fewer political explanations. The result is stability of supply categories. Bread is bread. Soap is soap. Sausage is sausage. If one category fails, it becomes a national problem. Because alternatives were not allowed to exist in parallel. In the market system, parallel alternatives are the default. They are how the system prevents any single failure from becoming total. That is why the shelf feels safe even when it looks excessive. It is not showing wealth. It is showing redundancy. Redundancy is what a planned system tries to eliminate. Redundancy is what a competitive system produces automatically. So when the Soviet Union tried to imitate Western abundance for display, it often had to stage it. Not because goods could never appear, but because the shelf is not a photographable moment. It is the output of constant motion. Constant motion requires constant feedback. Feedback requires decentralized choice. Decentralized choice requires the individual to do work. And the planned economy was designed to keep that work out of the individual's hands. Eventually, the visitor selects a cereal. Not because he has solved breakfast. Because the aisle will not solve it for him. He chooses a box and places it into the cart. The cart moves. The shelf remains. That is the system's trick. It makes abundance feel normal by making it continuous. It does not celebrate the shelf. It maintains it. The visitor leaves the aisle carrying one small unit of choice. A cardboard box. A decision made without permission. Back home, the same breakfast decision would have been made earlier, somewhere else. In an office. In a ministry. In a plan. In a quota. Here, the decision was made in front of the product. By the consumer. Under bright light. 47 boxes of cereal. A minor object. But a complete diagram. Because the Cold War was not only rockets and speeches. It was also distribution. Feedback. Redundancy. And the quiet transfer of decisions from institutions to individuals. In the aisle, the difference becomes visible. Not as ideology. As mechanics. And that is why a cereal shelf can explain what a planned economy could not reproduce. Not breakfast. But the structure that lets breakfast multiply. The shelf also hides costs. On the American side, choice is produced by surplus infrastructure. Extra trucks. Extra warehouses. Extra printing presses. Extra shelf space. Extra staff hours to rotate stock. A box that sits too long is not neutral. It becomes waste, discounting, or disposal. That loss is distributed across companies, not announced as a public failure. The shopper does not see the write-offs. He sees a clean aisle. On the Soviet side, scarcity hides costs too. A shipment that fails to arrive is not recorded as a missing preference. It is recorded as a disrupted plan. The cost is paid in time. Time in lines. Time in searching. Time in informal networks that replace the shelf as a distribution tool. In the West, the system spends material to save time. In the East, the system spends time to preserve material control. Both are rational inside their own logic. But only one of them produces 47 visible answers. That is why visitors often returned from the West describing abundance as something else. Not luxury. Not pleasure. A different geometry of daily life. The aisle compresses uncertainty into packaging choices. The planned economy pushes uncertainty outward into queues, substitutions, and waiting. The cereal shelf is simply where the compression becomes visible. Look again at the visitor. If he returned tomorrow, he would choose faster. Not because the shelf changed. Because he would begin learning the hidden curriculum of the market. You learn which brands are expensive signals. You learn which boxes are mostly air. You learn which promotions are temporary. You learn that new can mean testing. You learn that one failure does not end the category. This is what a consumer society trains. Continuous low-stakes decision-making. Over time, that training becomes political capacity. Not in the activist sense. In the operational sense. A person trained to compare and choose in small things becomes harder to manage through a single centralized instruction. Because the person is accustomed to alternatives. A person trained to accept what arrives becomes easier to manage through allocation. Because alternatives are not part of daily expectation. This is the quiet structural conflict. Not only what people owned, but what people were trained to do. In the supermarket aisle, the Cold War does not look like a map. It looks like a skill test. And 47 cereal boxes are the questions on the page.